overcoming objections to your proposal, your price is too high. You may hear this a lot. A lot of people just arbitrarily say your price is too high. Maybe another variation of this is we may be able to get the same thing less expensively somewhere else. Here is the unassailable value equation. Perhaps you've heard of it. Value equals benefits minus costs. Okay? This information, by the way, is adapted from an interesting book called Escaping the Price-Driven Sale by Tom Snyder and Kevin Kearns. It's a good read. These guys put themselves together with about 1,000 transactions. They did some post-mortems to decide when the price was the determinant and when it was something else. And they came up with some very interesting observations. For one thing, they felt that the unassailable value equation, I should say the seemingly unassailable value equation of value equals benefits less costs, that actually didn't fit with experience. And in order for it to fit, they had to change the definition of a couple of the words in that formula. Benefits, they said, would no longer just be financial benefits. They'd have to include the insight and the discovery that the customer receives from the buying experience. And on the cost side, it's no longer just price. From the standpoint of the buying experience itself, it is the time and effort that the customer is devoting to being sold to. So that's interesting. Now you have a totally different equation. Now it reads value equals benefits plus insight plus discovery minus costs plus time, or minus time minus effort. And now you have a whole different formula. It's the actual unassailable value equation incorporates these four interesting elements: insight, discovery, and time and effort. So what they felt after looking at all these case studies was that you could actually take price off the table by either revealing an unrecognized problem, by finding an unanticipated solution, by creating or revealing an unseen opportunity. These are the trends that they've seen in the situations where the affirmative decision to do the project was not the result of the lowest price, but rather because of one of these three phenomena. Okay. Now they also continue the analysis by saying if your prospect wants a better deal, you want to add more value rather than lower your price. And, it's funny. I don't know if you've ever been to the Stage Deli or the Carnegie Yale in New York. In fact, one of them's out of business now. But both of those delis had the propensity to have these oversized sandwiches. And no offense to any vegetarians viewing this, by the way, but let's imagine that's all tofu-induced ham. But bottom line is, you've got a situation where they have a certain number of seats. They're paying top rent, maybe $90 or $100 a square foot in rent in downtown New York and Times Square. They only have a certain number of seats. No matter how fast people eat, they can only eat so fast. So they only have a certain number of covers that they have at lunch and dinner. And they need to maximize their revenues to make a profit. So somebody came up with a bright idea, which was a combination of economics and spectacle, that if they made these sandwiches Herculean, just gargantuan, that people would buy the sandwiches. They'd never be able to finish them. They would then take a to-go bag, prominently labeled with the name of the deli, and walk through Times Square with it. And because they got so much to take home, they wouldn't feel ripped off for having paid $18 for what was normally a $9 sandwich in the marketplace, because the sandwich is twice as big. Now, anybody who knows the restaurant business realizes that food cost is not 100%, so they can make a sandwich twice as big without costing themselves twice as much money. And frankly, because so much of their overhead is not related to the food cost, and as a result, they actually made a larger margin. I mean, this place was crazy. One of those delis, I remember going into them, and you get a piece of chocolate cake. It was an 11-layer chocolate cake. When you cut a wedge of that thing, you could lay it down to the side. It took up an entire diner oval plate. I mean, you could have chalked a bus tire, changing a tire of a bus with this thing. It was so big. Of course, it cost probably $7 or $10, which back in the day was a lot of money for a slice of cake. But they did that because the gargantuan portions were both capturing the fascination of tourists, ensuring that the tourists carried these advertising to-go bags along with them, and it basically maximized the revenue they earned per seat in this deli. Bottom line is it's an interesting concept that actually has other extensions into non-dining realms. I will say, just as a couple of observations before we leave this lesson, you may think you lost a deal based on price. In reality, you probably lost on value. Because the fact of the matter is, if a person is convinced of the value, then they're going to realize that the price is very secondary. Anthony Robbins, one of my favorite motivational speakers, he says the quality of your outcome is directly related to the quality of the evaluations you're prepared to make. And so I'm going to give you some ideas of how you might make better quality evaluations when it comes to price. First of all, it's not about price, it's about perceived value. So you need to understand both the segment and the prospect well enough to connect the dots between your offering and what that prospect actually values, okay? Number two, you need to help that prospect make a more refined evaluation that allows them to appreciate your differentiation so that they find your price to be a bargain rather than a premium. Okay? The bottom line is it's not about price. It's not about commoditization. It's about perceived value. And the more you understand what they care about, what they genuinely value, the more you'll be able to rejigger what you're offering to resonate at the same frequency of those values so that they will consider you a bargain rather than a high-priced premium.